Welcome back to Mandem Football. Listen, I know it's been quite a while, but I'm glad to be back. A lot has happened over the last month since my last video, and we are absolutely back, flying better than ever, stronger than ever before. So let's dive into this. A lot has happened over the past month since I've been gone in the Premier League and just world football in general, but I want to stick properly to the Premier League as we've been really been touching on the Prems before, the hiatus basically of a month gone. But let me just say this right now. So much has happened. I mean, we're talking about Manchester City falling off, Liverpool flying, Arsenal falling off. As of recently, they just lost to West Ham and drew Nottingham Forest. So they seem like they are just out of the title race. Spurs, Manchester United still in the mud necessarily. Nottingham Forest are coming back. Newcastle are coming back. So much has happened over the last few months, just in the Prem, but definitely over the last month. But I want to touch on a team in particular because there's so much. Hold on, just want to bring my seat a little bit. There's so much going on and so much talk with this team in particular. And this team is Arsenal Football Club. Listen. I'm hearing a lot about the manager needs to go, or the manager is up in smoke. I'm hearing a lot about the board is up in smoke. The team is up in smoke. The players are up in smoke. Listen, when it comes to Arsenal and this club, right? This club is a very unique club compared to the rest of the clubs in the Prem because there's a lot of high expectations, but they're in a very particular position in terms of, how good they really are, their expectations, their standards, where they lie, especially with the lack of trophies being won over the last few years with Mikel Arteta. And his position as the coach is definitely in question. But I am here to say objectively that as a fan, as an analyst of football, there is absolutely no way Mikel Arteta needs to go. And that will be the title of this video today. Mikel Arteta needs to stay. Listen, if you're an Arsenal fan, if you are a fan of a rival club, if you're not even a fan of a big six club in general, there's no way Mikel Arteta needs to leave Arsenal. There's no way fans that are Arsenal fans think that Mikel Arteta needs to go. And I'll argue that with anybody, right? Leading up to now, everything for Arsenal has been a trajectory. Since he's been at office for Arsenal, since he's taken them to 5th place, now he's taken them to the Premier League title to compete for it, and now they're still in the Champions League knockout stage against PSV, right? I understand that Arsenal have not gotten a striker, fans. I understand that Arsenal have not gone into the market and gotten backup for the likes of Saka being injured, and the likes of Havertz being injured, and the likes of Martinelli and Jesus being injured. I understand. I completely understand. And do I think that Arsenal should have went in the market to get a player? Yes, I really do. But you have to understand that this is not the responsibility of the manager. This is the responsibility of the executive board, right? A lot of people are looking at Arteta as basically the strings, the guy that pulls all the strings, the guy that is controlling basically everything, right? From the players that he has to the players that he doesn't have, which doesn't make any sense because any player that he doesn't have is playing for another club. So that doesn't make sense. He is responsible for the academy players, which is not true because there are coaches that play for that coach academy players. He's only responsible for, players that he's interested in wanting to take into the first team. So that's that. He's definitely not responsible for the signing of players necessarily. He has a voice. He is influential, but he is not solely responsible on the players coming to Arsenal, right? And I think a lot of Arsenal fans and just fans in general, when it comes to their respective clubs, are just uneducated and lack the understanding of what really goes on when it comes to these transfer signings, right? I play FIFA career mode every now and then, but it's nothing like that. Like you as the manager are not responsible for the signings of players coming to your club. You are responsible for the players that you have at hand, right? So Arne Slot is responsible for Darwin Núñez. Arne Slot is responsible for Mohamed Salah. He is responsible for Cody Gakpo and Virgil van Dijk and Trent and Connor Bradley, right? Pep Guardiola is responsible for Erling Haaland and Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden and Kevin De Bruyne and Kovacic and Rodri, who is unfortunately injured, right? I'm just responsible for Archie Gray and Bergvall and Dominic Solanke, and you already get the gist of it, right? And so on and so forth. You could talk about any club. The manager is responsible for the players that he has at hand. He's not responsible for another player coming to the club. He is not responsible for players outside of the club, right? Do I think that Arsenal should have gotten a striker over the summer? Yes. Do I think Arsenal should have gotten a striker or a forward at least in the transfer market in January? Yes. But that is not down to the manager, right? Ollie Watkins was available. They wanted him for 40 million. Aston Villa asked for 60 million, right? They didn't want to put in that money. So they decided we're not going to go for him. Why do that when you know that Ollie Watkins is a top-level striker? He might be 29 years old, but he's a top-level striker. You could have him for 60 million. He's a fan of the club. He would take Arsenal to the next level, even if they were to keep him for the summer, right? It all is down to the manager's board that they have on top of them, right? It's all down to the board, right? We've seen the same thing. Arsenal fans need to understand that we've seen the same thing with Arsene Wenger when he tried to sign players. We've seen the same thing with Unai Emery when he tried to sign players at Arsenal, right? The board at Arsenal are not the only ones that are, cheap and want to actually play the long game, right? We've seen this with the Liverpool board and the staff that's there. They don't like to really buy players. They don't like to spend their money. They don't like to open up their pockets. Only once in a blue moon will they be able to do that. Once in a blue moon will you see a player the worth of Darwin Núñez coming to Liverpool or the price of a Declan Rice going to Arsenal. We've never seen that with these football clubs before up until the last 2 years or so, right? There's a lot of things that people don't understand that goes on behind the scenes that people are too quick to blame the managers for, because the simple fact is I get that the manager is the face and is like, the poster of what we expect that goes on behind the scenes, but there's so many more people and there's so many more things that are involved in what goes on at the club and why things don't always go the way of for football managers, right? Before I go, though, I do want to mention, I actually wrote this down and I have this off the top of my head. There are about 10 players, and I can prove this to you. There are about 10 different players that Mikel Arteta was interested in, and it's not anything private. That is just public knowledge that he was linked to these players and that he wanted to bring them in. It's just a matter of he can't be the one to pull the strings because he's not responsible for the signing of players. I'll name them right now. Number one, he wanted Pedro Neto, who's at Chelsea, from Wolves. We all know this because it was very open that he wanted him. He wants Benjamin Sesko, who's at Leipzig. He wanted him since the summertime. He couldn't get his hands on him. He wanted Lucas Paqueta, who's at West Ham. Couldn't get his hands on him. He wanted him as a number 10. He wanted Hassam Aouar, who was at Lyon, who's now playing in Saudi Arabia, I believe. He wanted him as an option. He also wanted Mykhailo Mudryk, who was at Shakhtar before he went to Chelsea. He's now suspended for doping, but he wanted him, and they made a bid for him, right? They were willing to go in the market to make a bid for him under the objective of what Shakhtar wanted, right? They wanted 100 million. However, Arsenal wanted to play smart. Edu wanted to play smart and think that they could, shoo Mudryk for less money, 99 million. It didn't happen. So Chelsea came in and just got him. So that's 5 players right there. Dusan Vlahovic when he was at Fiorentina, who's now at Juventus as a striker. He wanted him. He didn't get his hands on him. He wanted Douglas Luiz when he was at Aston Villa. Didn't get his hands on him. Now he's at Juventus. And now I'm hearing that he might come back to the Premier League, right? Paulinho, when he was at Fulham, he didn't get his hands on him. He wanted him. Couldn't get him. Now he's at Bayern Munich. He wanted Rafinha when he was at Leeds. Couldn't get his hands on him. Now he's playing for Barcelona and he's killing it. And there's a reason why Mikel Arteta wanted that player, because he's a superstar, right? And the last player, if I can think of it off the top of my head, no, I can't think off the top of my head, right? He wanted all of those players, 9 different players I just mentioned. Oh, and Alexander Isak, that's the player I was thinking of. He wanted Alexander Isak at some point, whether that was at Real Sociedad or whether that be at when he was at Newcastle as of right now. He is definitely wanting all of these players at a certain period of time. He wanted all of those guys. If he couldn't get his hands on one, he wanted his hands on another. And I can prove that because the players that he's left with are not players that he even wanted in the first place, right? Maybe he got the likes of Calafiori because he really wanted him. Maybe he really got the likes of Zinchenko because he really wanted him, right? Maybe he got the likes of Declan Rice and Mikel Merino that he really wanted. And I get that. Those are great players. But guess what? Mikel Arteta wanted all those guys, but instead of getting Dusan Vlahovic, he had to stick with Gabriel Jesus instead, right? Instead of getting Douglas Luiz or Paulinho, he got Jorginho instead, right? So those are 2 bargain players that he got, it plan B that he got. He also wanted Rafinha or Neto or Mudryk. He didn't get any of them. He got Leandro Trossard. Guys, it's so simple. It makes so much sense. It's not him that's responsible for the players that he's not signing. It's the board. Whenever he wants a player, he may get that player, but it depends on the actual price and it depends on how big of a gamble that player that he wants is going to be a green light or a red light from the board. And most of the time, it's a red light because there's so much more to it that people don't understand that makes the board go, no, we're not going to do it. And that is what's holding Arsenal back. If you have a manager like Mikel Arteta, who has taken Arsenal to the Premier League contenders list twice in a row in the Prem, and he can't even be backed by his own board to sign Ollie Watkins for an extra 20 million, right? It's just unacceptable. It's just a simple fact. It's the board that's holding him back. And Mikel Arteta, leading up to now, like I said before at the beginning, has been a trajectory, right? He has to stay at Arsenal. He's an excellent coach. If you're a fan of Arsenal, don't fall into the trap of what other fans are trying to tell you. Don't fall into the trap of what the media and the narratives are trying to spin. Don't fall into the trap of what Arsenal fans with big platforms try to say and try to speak their opinion, because most of the time they only judge a coach based on what they see in front of them. And what they see in front of them right now is not necessarily anything that's so appeasing to the eye, right? There's no trophies really there for Arteta right now, but all the hard work and the dedication and everything leading up to now has been a trajectory, and he needs to be backed, and the summer's going to be huge for Arsenal. So that's just that. That's my opinion. That's what I think of the Arsenal situation right now. It's so obvious. Liverpool are for sure going to win the Premier League at this point, and that's just the bottom line. I think Liverpool have been excellent. I think this was definitely a season for them to not win it, because I did not think that they would be in the position that they are. But listen, if City's not going to be there, if Arsenal are not going to be there, someone has to step up, and that team is Liverpool. So thank you guys for watching. Like usual, I am back and flying better than ever. I will be back shortly with a new video about a different club, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.